In the news this week, protecting children and the elderly. Are the young and vulnerable ready for variant X? An exclusive Q&A with WA's top doctor.
A shot in the arm. State government funding for industries affected by border opening delays. The Chief Health Officer's new definition of casual contacts, close contacts and exposure sites. Plus, Dr. Andrew Miller's comment.
This is The Evening News with Ivan Loom and Naliva Thorne.
Good evening. WA is facing a spike in local cases as high caseload protocols begin. Concerns remain as cases continue to emerge in schools and this week in aged care homes. So how prepared are the young and vulnerable if Western Australia faces the variant X scenario? AMA WA President Mark Duncan-Smith joined me in an exclusive discussion on variant X. Doctor, thanks for being here. Are West Australian kids well prepared when it comes to the unknown variant X scenario?
Yeah, look, the approach to kids and for COVID for everyone is always a vaccination plus policy. Now, what that means is the kids still need to get vaccinated. The 5 to 11-year-olds, it is approved. Now, the vaccines are being kept broad so that when a new variant X comes along, that the previous vaccination should give moderate and effective cover. Now, this is opposed to a more sniper approach to a variant X, where if you've got too close or too reduced a scope of the actual vaccine, well, then the new variant X might not be covered by a vaccine at all. So the vaccines will be kept broad. Children aged 5 to 11 do need to get vaccinated. They need the 2 doses. The studies are already being done in America for vaccines for children under 5 years of age. The preliminary reports are that the dosing they're using is too small and they'll have to up the dosing. But eventually there will actually be vaccinations available for kids even down to as low as 6 months.
So how should parents prepare their kids for the future unknown mutations?
The home environment isn't typically where a child is going to catch COVID or variant X. It's more in the school environment, and the school protocols are sort of getting set down reasonably well now. I had great concerns about the education system late last year because there was comments from in the ministry that they were just going to be cleaning the surfaces at schools down a bit more. There was a little bit of heat put on them and they did, I think, do a good job to get things up to scratch. They have focused and looked at ventilation in the schools, natural ventilation wherever possible, use of HEPA filters, possible use of masks in children when they're not too young, and taken measures to isolate the children so that schools don't have mass gatherings anymore. Classes are generally kept to themselves during play breaks, lunchtimes, so that you're not getting cross-contamination between different classes and different age groups. In the home environment, I think it's really about just having a loving, friendly home environment. The children will be getting a little bit stressed from everything that's going to be going on with Omicron. They do see the news, they do hear the news. And I think it's important to just be open and honest with them in the communication and listen to them. They probably know more about it than we think they do. The home environment also, it's a matter of, again, having good ventilation. If they get symptoms, then treat them accordingly. And of course, if anyone in the house gets symptoms, then get them tested. It's better to know than not to know.
Under the high caseload settings, how will the variant X scenario affect WA's children and youth?
Look, the variant X scenario is that the natural history of a mutation in a pandemic like this is that the variant itself becomes more transmissible or more easily infected, and it is less severe. Now, the logic for this is that if you've got 100 people with viruses and one of them's particularly deadly, well, then you've only got 50 people left to then transmit the virus on. Whereas in the other one, where it wasn't so deadly and there's 99 people there, well, there's 99 people to transmit the virus on. So therefore, as mutations occur, the less deadly virus tends to replicate more and become more dominant. And also, obviously, if a virus becomes, as a new variant, more infective, well, then it just infects a lot more people too. So that's why the natural history of a virus, when it mutates, is it becomes less severe and more easily caught.
The infections in WA's aged care homes are a worry. What's your take on the matter?
Look, it's a big worry, and it has been very, very frustrating trying to get the federal government and the state government to coordinate, communicate, and result in a good system to protect our elderly people who deserve to be protected. What's been going on is that the federal government is really responsible for aged care, and the state government's been saying it's a federal problem. And the federal have sort of, in some ways, not been doing a good job of dealing with it. And so it's been falling through the cracks. Now, we have been communicating with the state government saying, well, it may be a federal issue, but ultimately when these patients get COVID and when they get sick and they get transferred out of the nursing home, well, guess where they go? They go to the state hospital and then therefore clog it up. So, you know, we did move and request that the state government provide PPE if the federal government wasn't going to, that there was proper lines of communication to allow these patients to be transferred. Also, we urged the government to, or the state government to ensure that each nursing home upgraded the advanced care directives of all of their residents in consultation with the residents and their family, so that if there were people or residents that didn't want to be transferred to a hospital and were happy to take the risk there at the nursing home, that they wouldn't necessarily be transferred. It is greatly concerning that we've already got an outbreak in nursing homes here in Perth, and we just hope that the requests that we've made have resulted in enough resourcing for the elderly patients to be taken care of with safety and with dignity.
So how will the aged care system cope under the variant X scenario?
Well, again, it would just depend also how variant X affected elderly patients. Expectation with the variant X is it's more easily caught, but less severe. So if it did get to a point where it wasn't necessarily causing severe disease or fatality in the aged care group, well, then it may be able to be treated in the future like an influenza type disease. But influenza does kill the elderly quite a bit too. That's why they're very strongly encouraged to get the annual influenza or flu shot. So again, with the passage of time, with variant X, it may become so that it still can be a fatality in the elderly, but just not as commonly or as much that we're seeing with the current Omicron and Delta and the previous COVID variants.
Dr. Duncan Smith, thanks for your time.
Pleasure, Ivan. Always good to see you.
The gates are locked to workers at Newspaper House this week as wage dispute continues.
The State Secretary of the Australian Manufacturing Workers Union, Steve McCartney, spoke to WAMN about the protest and what's to come next week.
So what's the next course of action for you?
Our next course of action is we're running for a no campaign this weekend to make sure there's another vote no with a majority, so that we'll find that out lunchtime on Friday. Lunchtime on Monday. On Monday, if it's a no vote, the company has already said they're going to lock us out and keep us locked out. So it'll be a war of attrition until we get our conditions back and we get our money back.
So can you just give a quick breakdown of the events which led up to this, to the shutdown happening?
Oh well, we got locked out because they put an agreement up that none of us were happy with. The members didn't like the agreement. They told the company that they weren't interested in cutting their wages, cutting their conditions and giving away their safety net, because they were the only options that these workers had put in front of them. We made sure that we told the boss that wasn't going to happen, and they took it to the vote without, they didn't want to negotiate anymore. They took it to the vote and it wasn't voted up. And as soon as it wasn't voted up, they locked out all those workers. So their workers and their families are now locked outside the gate.
And what are those conditions?
The entitlements that they get for doing extra work have all been slashed down to the bottom rate. It's around about $4.95 an hour discount on people's wages, and also $3.95 on people's allowances. So if you add that up and you're a low-paid worker on 38 hours a week, that makes a big difference to their pay packet. The other important part, of course, is they want to slash their redundancy payment.
WA industries affected by the McGowan government's border reopening delay will be getting a financial shot in the arm, with new funding to support businesses. The $77 million package will help the tourism, international education and events sectors, but the opposition says it's too little, too late. Nelson Liu reports.
Help is on the way for industries affected by the state government's border reopening delay, with a financial package to support businesses. The government has announced funding this week worth $77 million that will go to businesses and organisations in tourism, international education, aviation and events sectors. Funding will cover cash flow while offsetting costs and lost revenue. Premier Mark McGowan says delaying the border reopening was a difficult decision based on health advice over a rise in Omicron cases in the state. He says the financial support for businesses reflects the decision.
And while the hard border is being reviewed this month, as we said we would, making the difficult decision to delay the full border opening has affected some industries that are based on travel. That is why I'm announcing a comprehensive multi-million-dollar package to help those industries most impacted by the border decision.
Meanwhile, the Tourism Council of WA has called the funding a big help to the industry, while also assisting international education and events.
Look, certainly we've seen a lot of businesses close. They've closed down for the season or they've closed permanently. We've businesses that are putting their houses up for sale or mortgaging their own houses and retirement funds just to keep the business going or to refund deposits. It's been personally devastating for them, but we just need that border to be open, and the cash in the meantime for those businesses badly affected is very welcome indeed.
The opposition, however, has slammed the support package as too little, too late. It says it's inadequate for a government with a surplus.
It is an absolute disgrace to see the complete contempt again with which the McGowan government is treating businesses in Western Australia.
At this stage, a new date has not yet been set to reopen WA's border. Nelson Liu, WAMN News.
WA's Chief Health Officer Dr. Andrew Robertson has stated that people will not be classed as casual contacts unless they fall under a very specific definition. This is due to the continuing rise of COVID-19 cases in WA and having reached a high caseload period announced in late January. People will now classify as close contacts if they are a household member or intimate partner who has had contact with a person who has been infectious with COVID, have had more than 15 minutes of face-to-face contact without a mask with an infectious person who is also without a mask, have spent more than 2 hours in a small room without a mask with an infectious person who is also without a mask, or have been told by WA Health that they are a close contact. The Chief Health Officer also announced that the method of listing exposure sites will change to listing high-risk sites only.
A 52-year-old woman has been charged after allegedly abusing a liquor store worker in Alexander Heights over mask and proof of vaccination mandates. The woman was said to have verbally abused the worker and customers in the store and was also not wearing a mask at the time. The woman was asked to leave the store. As the woman had not worn a mask, the worker followed her outside to take a photo and to make sure she was no longer in the store. The accused then allegedly stole the worker's mobile phone to try and delete the photo until members of the public intervened and the accused dropped the phone and left the scene. The woman was charged with 1 count of common assault and 1 count of stealing from another person, as well as being cautioned in regard to a failure to comply with the direction.
This week on the WAMN Extra News Club, we continue our coverage into WA's independent journalism through our Democracy Project series. Youth Jam Radio is a growing independent online radio station that focuses on youth matters. Recently, they were given media accreditation to attend state government press conferences. We explored how this independent service has become a vital advocate for young adults in WA and how it provides a platform for student journalists to cut their teeth before entering the industry.
I think will grow and become more important as time goes on. But I think for now, we have a place in representing young people, and I think as time goes on, that will continue to be the case.
How do you think your network will influence the way that they think or the way that they vote?
We're the giver of information, and they can make their own minds up. We're never going to say to someone, vote for this person, vote for that person, because that's not our job. In fact, I believe that that's quite negligent to do that. So we just put the information out there and people can make their own decisions from there.
I keep coming back because I enjoy doing what I'm doing here. It's not very often that you get the chance to be a university student studying the techniques of writing stories and interviewing people and everything you get taught in that class, and then being able to immediately apply them at a station that is geared towards your demographic.
You can watch and read all that, plus our continuing coverage on the Variant X issue. You can subscribe to WAMN Extra News Club on the link in the description and support independent journalism.
The Department of Justice is facing criticism over its mistreatment of youth detainees, with staff shortages causing the centre to struggle to cope. It's understood the centre's staffing levels have dropped to less than half of ideal numbers as they try to manage around 140 detainees. Staff shortages also led to a lockdown in certain parts of the centre, which fueled detainees' frustrations. The recent sentencing of the 15-year-old boy over multiple criminal offences have highlighted the matter, with the judge slamming the department over their treatment of the boy. The department's Director General has requested a review following the scathing criticism.
A dream is nearing reality for WA researchers who are now a step closer to bringing the Tasmanian tiger back from extinction after mapping the genome of the numbat. Scientists from UWA DNA Zoo have mapped the first chromosome-length genome of the numbat with a blood sample from Perth Zoo. It's brought back the idea of resurrecting the Tasmanian tiger. But authorities says mapping the genome is critical for conservation of the numbat.
When I looked at the comparisons between the Tasmanian devil and the numbat, which are about 37 million years apart in evolution, I saw the DNA as a straight line with a few inversions in that. And that was my bingo moment.
They're just lovely, aren't they?
Simply adorable. Don't you like the shot where we just jumped up like a meerkat?
Oh, I want one as a pet.
Right, we'll go see you in the zoo.
I will one day.
And now here's AMA WA spokesman Dr. Andrew Miller with his weekly COVID-19 update and commentary.
Hi, thanks for your time. I think Mark McGowan vindicated a bit this week with 78 cases per day, a lot of those being in travellers, which shows that the wisdom of making sure that they do their 7 days quarantine when they get here in order to safely but compassionately bring people into the state. And it's been great to see the ability of those family reunions to go ahead, but in a manner that's not going to really quickly kick off the exponential spread that we're starting to see in Western Australia. Now, you might think that makes no difference, but every day that goes by, we have more people who've had a chance to have their third dose, more people who have their chance to get their hands on some N95 masks or some HEPA filtration or some rapid antigen tests. And so all of those things will contribute to reducing the suffering from disease, as well as the hospitalisations, as well as the deaths that unfortunately will result from this spreading through our community. So we're now up to 50% of our population here having had a booster dose for those aged 16 years and over. And we're sitting on very good second dose rates now, around 90% of the population over the age of 12 having had their second dose. So really good to see all of that. Interesting news around under 5-year-old vaccination, where there's been some changes to what Pfizer and Moderna are doing with their trials over there. But I'm told still promising to see some announcement very soon about the 3-dose plan for Pfizer for under 5s, and that will be great to bring that in. And of course, they're also trialling the Omicron variant. All the information we're getting is that this BA2 version is spreading a bit quicker, but it is not particularly mild in unvaccinated people. And in vaccinated people, it's still a worry. It still causes inflammation in most body systems. Some people still do get very sick with it. And it's important that we protect the vulnerable members of the community just as much as we protect everybody else. Everyone has a right to a position on the lifeboat from COVID. And this balance of allowing more people to come into the state, but just expecting reasonable testing and quarantine, and then I think gently applying the brakes as we see more and more cases, in order not just to preserve the health system, which is incredibly important, but to preserve people's lives. Just because we had a good run last year through all of the controls and the hard work that the community did in being isolated from the rest of the world, doesn't mean that we can just allow disease to run rampant this year. That's not ethically correct. We need to save lives where we possibly can. It's been suggested by some that we're responding to this in a disproportionate manner, but we always try very hard for patients to come to our hospitals, whether they have cancer, whether they have cardiovascular disease, whether it be diabetes, asthma, epilepsy. We try very hard for very small parts of the population. We put very big resource into trying to help those people. Whether it be influenza, we undertake massive campaigns to reduce the damage from that disease every year. And of course, the deaths from influenza in a bad year in Australia are far less than the deaths that we've already had in just 1 month in the East Coast from COVID. So we cannot accept that the new normal is just going to be lots and lots of deaths, because those people matter just as much as anybody else. And these are people who, if they had any other kind of disease, we would try very hard to look after them, not going into futile kind of treatments, not doing anything that they wouldn't want, but it's very important that we allow people their right to feel that society will look after them as much as it's going to look after anybody else. Thanks for your time today.
That's Dr. Andrew Miller. Here is Leo with what's coming up on 6 News tonight.
Thanks guys. Today on 6 News Breaking News Super Saturday, 4 by-elections held in New South Wales in what some say is the first major test of New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet and Labor leader Chris Minns. We've got the latest on the results, plus Victoria's Code Brown for its health system set to be lifted and restrictions on elective surgery also easing. Authorities reporting lowering case numbers but hospitalisation rates and deaths continuing to rise. And a community left in shock after a man died at a motel in Brisbane's north after being found with critical head and leg injuries. Our reporter is standing by on the ground. You can see full details on those stories and plenty more by heading to our YouTube channel. Just search 6 News Australia to find us, or our website 6newsau.com. But now though guys, it's back to you.
Thanks, Leo. And that's our weekly news and current affairs. We have the latest news on our website, wamnews.com.au.
From Melly and myself, we wish you good health, good night. See you next Sunday.
Thanks for watching.